The Tournai Tapestry is so important because it's so old. When you think that it was woven in the late 1470s and it was finished in 1480, it was already an antique when Henry VIII was king. It sort of puts it into perspective. As a cultural artefact for our country, it's hugely important. It's a massively important piece of work. What makes this tapestry unique is that it has a knight at the centre of it. A lot of tapestries that date from early times are very floral, they have biblical scenes, but this is the last remaining tapestry that has a knight on horseback as its main theme.
This tapestry, being the oldest and one of our most important in the collection, really needed some extra care and attention. In a survey in the early 2010s, it showed that the tapestry had become grey from soiling, it was becoming structurally weak, and we knew if we wanted to keep it safe and hanging on the wall, it would need some care. And that's why it was decided to come to our studio in Norfolk so we can carry out remedial treatment. The process of conserving a tapestry is quite a lengthy one because there's many different processes, from preparing to cleaning to doing the stitch treatment and then getting it lined and back into the property. So overall, the work we did in the studio took one person roughly 1.5 years full time. When we carry out our conservation treatment, it's really important to match the colours to not the original colours, but the colours we have now. We use different materials for that. So wool can either be bought in, or if we can't find a colour, we will dye them ourselves. We don't use natural dyes as would have been done originally because they're difficult to repeat and their fastness can't be guaranteed, so they might fade differently than the original wool. So we use synthetic dyes, which are more stable and more controlled. When we have our tapestries wet cleaned, we send them to the Wit in Belgium. They are a specialist company and they have the facilities and the knowledge to wet clean tapestries. When the tapestry gets there, it gets laid on a mesh which is perforated, and the tapestry gets sprayed with water through an aerosol system. So this means water gets very gently spread out and can slowly penetrate the fibres. And this really helps with historic textiles where the fibres can be very fragile. By having it on a perforated mesh, this means the water can just run through and they can also turn on suction. So by this way, it's a very controlled system and it's very gentle.
I was lucky enough to be able to follow the tapestry to Belgium for its wet clean. I spent the day invigilating the wet clean. We knew it would all work fine, but it's trust policy to always have somebody there. And I saw the mist coming down onto the textile. I saw the bubbles burst. I saw the liquid as it was drawn off the tapestry range from being so dirty, it was like Coca-Cola in colour, to absolutely clear. And that took from 9 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Then it was dried and it was blotted with the biggest towels I've ever seen in my life until it was almost dry. And then it was the temperature was raised in the gantry that was lying on until it was dry. And basically that took one whole day, a wet clean of a tapestry. Now that the tapestry's back home, our conservation work is all about preventing further damage. We spent a huge amount of money having it conserved, and that conservation now has to last, ideally, 100 years. Obviously, things can go wrong and we might have to conserve it again within 100 years, but that's the aspiration. The main point of damage comes from light, so we do an awful lot to try and control the light falling on the tapestry. Light is electromagnetic radiation, so basically it burns molecules to ash. And if you're burning the molecules of a tapestry to ash, then you're not going to have any tapestry left. So it's hugely important that we stop that process happening. And that's why we generally display them in darker environments. We manage to light much more specifically. Our visitors are hugely important to projects like the conservation of the Millefleur tapestry. Without them, it just couldn't happen. So every time you visit, every time you spend a couple of hours volunteering for the Trust, all these massive gestures of support are so valuable and enable us to do the research and the conservation on these nationally important cultural items so vital to our history and our culture.